Hey everyone, and welcome to Hoops Lounge Radio Edition, Episode 9. This is the Pacers Heat Finals Edition, Conference Finals Edition, and Finals Preview. Myself, Sporting Phil, joined by my co-host Montreal Marc. How you doing today morning, or this morning, sir?
It is morning, and I'm doing wonderful. And some of you may be able to tell already that we're trying out some new technology. So we've got the Blog Talk radio show as well as the vodcast, which is absolutely amazing. So we're doing the audio and the video version of the show now. Hope you guys enjoy it. And what are we going to be talking about today?
Today's Power Pack show, we obviously have Game 7 to preview between the Heat and the Pacers. Game 6 just happening, big game. A lot of action happening that way. Obviously, we want to talk about the Western Conference, so we're looking at the San Antonio Spurs, how they are preparing for the outcome of this series. Who would they maybe like to play against, where they're coming from, how they're preparing for this. On top of that, we have some big news from the Toronto Raptors camp, naming their new GM. We're going to step into that. And one of basketball greats of the last 10, 15 years retiring, so we're going to get into that as well. So big show, and as always, we want to kick it off with the most recent stuff. After watching Game 6 of Indiana and the Miami Heat, that was kind of a crazy game with Indiana coming out on top. So they're taking Game 6, heading back 2 games for Game 7 in Miami. How'd you like this game?
It was electric, and I mean that on 2 different levels because I have to set this up. Sporting Phil, my man here, helped me move into a new home yesterday, so we both have a bit of a sunburn. And then I got home after a pretty exhausting day doing that, and I went to a nice cafe to watch the game, and thunder and lightning storm like crazy. Lost power for a good 30 minutes, pouring cats and dogs, and honestly came back, and it's just electricity on the court. The way the chirping, the kind of back and forth between LeBron and Paul George, like in the first game, I thought it was something special to watch. I think Indiana won by 13, but it felt like they won by 2. It's going to be a dogfight Game 7, and I don't know. What do you think in this series have been kind of the most focalized points that people are going to remember from this?
Unfortunately, I'm going to say flopping. I mean, we saw a bunch of people getting fined. I'm guessing that LeBron James, I don't know if you remember that play, Paul George puts his elbow or something into him at the top of the key. LeBron James flops. I think he's getting fined for that one again. I don't know if this is a good thing for the Indiana Pacers, though, because remember when LeBron James got pissed off for the fine last time, he came out with a huge game, and they can't afford that to happen in Game 7. I think the 2 things on the court in the actual playing style is the down-low presence of the Indiana Pacers. Roy Hibbert, David West just putting the hurt on the Miami Heat. And the lack of shooting from the Miami Heat. They're just shooting atrociously. Ray Allen, Shane Battier. I mean, we saw the shooting statistics from Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade yesterday. It's kind of like LeBron's on Lonely Island these days. It's I don't know. I was kind of expecting the team to step up more than that. I mean, obviously they're playing without Burton, and Joel Anthony was having a tough time, but it can't just be LeBron James, or they're going to lose this series.
Yeah, and Bird Game being suspended for Game 6, I thought that was a good call by the NBA. Very similar between the Chicago series with LeBron being pushed in that series as well. Bird may be back. Honestly, I don't think they've missed him that much in Game 6, but they are going to need him at home on Game 7. So that's going to be a really good addition for them to have. I wanted to ask you one question. The play that this series may be beyond the push, the play this series probably may be known best for is LeBron's block on George Hill, where he's like 8 feet over the rim. I wanted to ask you if that play was good, equal, or better than Roy Hibbert's block on Melo a couple weeks back.
I don't know.
Not an easy question.
I'm going to pick still Hibbert's block. I'm kind of a sucker for the big men in the game, and I think it's a lot harder to block Carmelo Anthony than George Hill.
Yeah.
It's impressive either way, but I'm going with Roy Hibbert. And, you actually alluded to something really intelligent there, because I thought the turning point, and so did a lot of the commentators, was that kind of the call on LeBron James where Roy Hibbert kind of just stood his ground and LeBron James ran into him. and it looked like he was leading with his arm and got called for the offensive foul, and then you saw LeBron James scamper down the court like, I can't believe it. You know, and after that, it kind of gave Roy Hibbert legitimacy. Like people, he's being seen as a star. Like he's getting those star calls now. Oh, it was interesting. They were complaining all sorts, and then 3 plays later, LeBron James drew a foul on him. So it's not like they weren't calling fouls on. And they were doing this ticky-tack foul on the baseline. I was like, oh, it's barely a foul. But I honestly think this whole series is the emergence of Roy Hibbert. I mean, Roy Hibbert's turning from kind of a solid starter to their best player. I mean, he is more consistent than Paul George now. He keeps it together more than David West. I mean, the backcourt of Indiana has disappeared from so many games. It seems like if the Indiana backcourt can honestly give you 15 to 20 points a game, you almost win, and that seems like nothing. But let's look at Game 5 when they lost. They gave them like almost zero. George Hill and Lance Stevenson was really giving them nothing. For me, the issue on both sides, there are problems. With the Heat, we have the lack of shooting and the lack of defending the post. And with the Pacers, for me, it's taking care of the ball. There's so many turnovers. How many times did we see Lance Stevenson go up, blow up the pass? George Hill goes, George Hill, Lance Stevenson, or Paul George. Any of these guys, they're okay ball handlers, but they really need that point guard to just slow things down. Because I feel if they had that, they could be feeding the post more. It's like if they get to that point and then they're able to feed the post, it's a win every time. But they fail to get it there, and that's where Miami's preying on them with this fast defense.
Okay, well, I'm going to speak to 2 things you said there. Roy Hibbert, last night after Game 6, I don't know if you heard it, but he had people are saying bizarre press conference after the game, where he basically, he used a couple of expletives, and basically said, we haven't been getting press all season. You guys haven't been covering us at all, talking to reporters. That's why he was, whatever. He was not a lot of picks by journalists at the end of season awards. That part of the step into the equation, I think he's really stepping up his game, and he's taking a leadership role within that team. He's a young guy, but I think his attitude is right. But on the other hand, he actually had said a gay slur during the press conference last night too. It shows his youth as well, to be honest. So this is a young team. They're slowly coming together. And one thing also you mentioned was balanced scoring. A really great statistic I read the other night was that the Indiana Pacer franchise has gone something like 35 straight playoff games without having a player score 30 points. And this is a record in the modern era of 24-second shot clock basketball.
No kidding. There's no other team in the playoffs who can really say that, right?
Yeah. So, balanced scoring. And I have to bring up David West because he's doing all the little things, getting deflections. I think it was in Game 5, Game 4. And I think the biggest play outside of, as you mentioned before, LeBron running down the court, showing that, he's not in complete control right now. But the biggest play for me was after Mike Miller was trying to pull a Reggie Miller and hit a couple of threes, Miami's getting the game back. All of a sudden, there's a rebound on the Pacers, and Mike Miller got the ball. David West took the ball away from him and dunked hard on Miami. And I think he set the game.
I loved it.
And I think he set the tone and said, basically, Game 7, we're going to play basketball. So that's what we're going into Monday night.
And he played that whole game really sick. They were saying in the first quarter there, he looked like death. They're almost saying to take him out of the game, but he just man through. David West. What really impresses me with this Indiana team is their ability for their bigs to stay on the floor and guard the perimeter. We saw Tyler Hansborough guarding Ray Allen at certain points, and I actually thought he did a really good job. And then we saw David West going outside, even picking up LeBron James at certain times. These are very mobile fours. And what this allows Frank Vogel is to keep his big men on the floor. So when it comes to the offensive side of the game, they just punish Miami inside. So if I honestly think if Miami's going to pull this off, Wade looks injured to me. He doesn't look 100%. Bosch, where's Bosch? Where are his excuses at this point? He's being muscled out. I get it, but you have to man up and you have to get things done. But time to switch conferences again. We've got already we've got the West, so we're looking at San Antonio Spurs. So we quickly want to look at these guys. So they're waiting in the midst. They're just waiting for these guys to slug it out and see who comes out. Hopefully more bloody than not, right? If you're a San Antonio fan, you're hoping that these guys really come out with some war wounds. I mean, right now, they're resting. Coach Popovich is getting them ready. It's a veteran team, so while some teams the layoff would be detrimental, I think for a team like this, they're nursing their wounds. We're going to see Parker back, Ginobili back. I mean, it's not like these guys were missing time. They were just playing banged up. So having some time to sit there and not have to force things, I think this is a good spot. Now, when they're watching TV, they're obviously watching this series. Now, quickly, if you're the San Antonio Spurs, A, what are you keying in on your off time? And B, who do you want to play?
You know what? Philosophically, I would always say bring it on whoever. I don't ever look at the game that way, and I think that's the way Popovich looks at it. I think they're just breaking down both teams equally. But I want to speak to this first. I really do not like the NBA scheduling, how basically in the Western Conference Finals, the Spurs played Memphis 2 games before the Eastern Conference Finals even started. And so that delay, that stutter between the 2 series and having 9 nights off, I think it's just – it can't be that way. They have to start within a day of each other, and it's giving such a huge advantage to a team a veteran team who actually needs this. So I mean, even if Miami or the Pacers do end up beating the Spurs, there's still going to be that question mark, because I think it gives them a marked advantage to be having this much rest and this much time to prepare and just lick their wounds, as you're saying. Like I said, regarding who they want to play, I think they're just preparing and resting and healing up, and they're just going to be – and they have home court versus the Pacers, is that correct? And not versus Miami?
Exactly.
So that would be the one thing, home court advantage.
Yeah, that was one thing we were following some news how Manu Ginobili made mention how he actually wants Indiana to win because they want the home court advantage. Yeah. And if I'm the Spurs, I want to play Indiana too, because like I said, their lack of ball control coming up the floor, Miami is good at taking care of that. San Antonio will send you home. Those mistakes, I think that backcourt is going to have a real tough time, especially on the offensive end. I think defensively, George Hill and Lance Stevenson will do all right on Parker and Ginobili if it gets that far. It's just them bringing up the ball. I think there's too much pressure. Danny Green and all these guys. I think it's going to be a turnover fest. For me, the success of the Pacers is their ability to get it past, the top of the three-point line. If they can get it in there and get to the mid-range game with David West, with Paul George has been playing out of his mind, by the way. I think he definitely needs some credit. His three-point range, his defense on LeBron, anyways. But if they can get it in, I think they still have that advantage. I think Tim Duncan and Thiago Splitter and their other bigs match up a little better than Miami do. But I think Roy Hibbert and West can still make them pay and get in foul trouble. So I think it's going to be interesting. If I'm the Spurs, I'd much rather play the. Although the same could be said, like Tim Duncan has no rival there when he was playing Miami. I don't know. It's tough. I can see it both ways. I'm going to say I'd rather play Indiana, but it's only because I think their lack of ball control at the point guard and shooting guard position put them at a great disadvantage. And in the playoffs, it's about limiting mistakes, and I think the Spurs will maximize Indiana's mistakes.
Okay, so one interesting question, I believe it's from Bill Simmons the other day, and if Tim Duncan, and this is a big if, him and Greg Popovich win their 5th title together, does this make Tim Duncan the best player of his generation?
5th title.
I mean, that's obviously, to me, that's a dynasty.
I mean, at this point, we're putting him over Shaquille O'Neal, right?
Kobe.
I think it's a little tougher to put him over Shaq than Kobe, personally. Best of his generation. It's tough, right? Because theoretically, wasn't Manu there for a lot of it, and he's done a little more on the world scene, I guess.
And Kobe had Shaq early in his career, too.
Yeah, that's true. I would say I think he's definitely in that conversation of best power forward ever after this, and best big man. I mean, it's tough because we were talking about this, how people hate putting him in, the best center category. He plays a lot of center. He plays a lot of power forward. And when you put him best power forward, you're talking about, your Garnetts, your Karl Malone. But at center, there's your Chamberlain, Shaqs, and all that. I think he will go down as one of the best players of his generation. Is just his ability, his longevity, and to me, whenever you're talking about a star, you have to be able to do it on both sides of the floor. I've said this 1,000 times in all my commentaries of players, and his ability to be on that first team defensive side, still have huge block bounds, make safe plays. I mean, if you could take every active NBA player today, put them in, and put them all in the draft at 21 years old, Tim Duncan would be my #1 pick.
Absolutely, and it's his leadership off the court too, right? He sets the tone with that franchise. He knows how to. He's an all business type of guy, and he leads by attitude, his work, blue collar work ethic, and like you said, he plays both ends of the courts. He makes everyone accountable, and it's been his team since 1999, and it's just amazing to see the way him and Greg Popovich have grown. They call Kobe Vino, but Tim Duncan's a Vino too. I mean, absolutely amazing.
No, exactly. Well, and so we'll have to see going forward who they end up playing. Quickly before we jump into the next subject, if you quickly had to pick Indiana-Miami Game 7, if I'm putting you on, well, look, we're talking about the finals. We're talking about who San Antonio is going to be playing. Yeah. So it wouldn't be fair if we didn't have this one wrapped up before we jumped in, because by the next podcast we're talking finals, right?
Okay. Oh, man. I love momentum. It's a very important word. I picked the Pacers by 1 point.
I'm going to say I don't think LeBron James allows this to happen. I think LeBron James absolutely torches them, and I think at least one of Wade. Like, you can't keep Ray Allen and Battier down shooting-wise. And it was funny. I think that's the reason we saw Mike Miller on the floor, because Shane Battier was shooting so inefficiently. Yeah. Like I think ideally Coach Spoelstra is never playing Miller because of all the three-point shooters. Yes. But keep it short to go next. I'm picking Miami because I think they're taking this one personally, and I think LeBron James goes buck.
So that means that the Game 1 will haunt them forever, losing at the end with Hibbert out. So many twists and turns in this series.
Yeah, well, it's gonna be fun. So next subject, we're looking at we previewed this on last week's episode. Toronto Raptors, they were looking for a new GM. They landed him, Masai from Denver. Originally from Toronto, then went to Denver, and he is now the new GM. 5-year deal worth $15 million, so $3 million a year for a GM. But this guy has some pedigree. You want to give your 2 cents on what this guy has brought so far in a main role in Denver?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Anytime you can land the defending NBA Executive of the Year, you grab that man. And, it's historic here. Bringing him back, like you said, he was an assistant GM with Brian Colangelo back in 2010. I think I mentioned this last show. He's an African citizen, national. So he's the first African to be a GM in a major North American sport. Absolutely amazing. He loves the city of Toronto. Very multicultural city. Good for fit for him. He already knows the franchise, like I said. The things he did in Denver, the Carmelo trade, which he actually apologized for after it took place. The pieces he got out of the trade and the type of people he got, like Iguodala.
He did so well in that.
Walton,
he got so much talent.
Drafting Evan Fournier. I mean, all the things he's done in the last 3 years to bring that franchise from nothing that was basically torn apart by the Melo trade, and to bring to the point where they can win, I believe, 15 straight Western Conference regular season games. If he could do half of that with Toronto, I think the Raptor fans are going to be satisfied, because he's a heck of a pick, and glad to have him in Canada.
No, exactly. I mean, and that Carmelo trade I thought went down really well. They got a bunch of stars, Gallinari, Wilson Chandler, and a bunch of nice players. And he said his drafting. Let's talk about. He took a chance on Kenneth Faried, right?
That's true.
Really paying off. Evan Fournier, he saw the value in re-signing Andre Miller as the backup point guard. And let's not forget, he turned a follow into Andre Iguodala. So Iguodala's on the team because of him. So a very deep team, and he was able to take a team, even losing their arguably best player, Gallinari, and still do well. Third in the West. The West is brutally tough. And they were the third best.
With the horrible, the start of their season, their schedule was terrific. You got to keep that in mind, too.
No, and he's only 42 years old, so it's not like So it's interesting because it's not like a Donnie Walsh there in Indiana who we're worried about him retiring. Like he could be there for the long run, and you know, money talks. Like as a GM, you're not going to be making $3 million often. So he's come to Toronto with a lot of talent. I mean, people have been talking about this. I think Toronto's doing the right thing. We spoke before. The main guy in charge, they brought in a big name. Now they're bringing executive of the year. Now we'll see what happens with the coach. And players, but I mean, they have lots of talent to build on. They have DeRozan, they have Gay, they have Valanciunas, they have, and let's not forget, we look at Amir Johnson. We think he's an old grizzled vet. He's only like 25, 26. So, like, they're a very young team. Kyle Lowry, again, the same thing, you know, and they have options. But we have to think of just quickly. What do you think if he's stepping in there? We don't have to go into crazy detail. What do you think his first order of business is? Like, what's the person or position or, like, where are you first looking at there? I mean, obviously, the draft is they lost a pick in the trade there. So
OKC's got it.
Yeah, so it's a personnel deal now.
Yeah, I mean, well, first off, behind the scenes, quickly, I would say Colangelo will not stay on for the long ride. I think it's just too much of a conflict of interest.
Completely
so
agree.
They sort that out. As I mentioned, coaching, I think, is going to be an issue. I want them to start fresh. And the elephant in the room is Bargnani. Absolutely, you know, if he can get rid of Melo, he can do anything. So let's see what happens there. I'd love to see them pick up a backup point guard, to be honest. Yeah. And somehow get rid of Bargnani's contract. We'll see what happens.
Well, I think trading Melo is a little bit easier because the Knicks really wanted Melo.
Yeah.
Bargnani, unfortunately, being the number one pick, supposed to be the savior of the franchise, is an amnesty casualty or candidate. Like basically, in the amnesty world, they have the choice of Amir Johnson, who at this point for $7 million being the starting power forward. I really don't think they're ever getting rid of this guy. Linus Kleiza, who does make a little bit of sense to get rid of, and they're paying all that money, those wing guys, or Bargnani. So I think Kleiza being the smaller contract. I think Bargnani, I think they'll try to trade him, but I think, well, it's interesting. Do you think the first order of business is coach or Bargnani?
Oh, boy. Equally
I know,
important.
It's a little tough, right?
Yeah. He's got, let's just say he's got his hands full.
I'm going to say coach because I think they're going to switch over. I think Casey has a role as the defensive side. Like he did with Dallas, but I think coach is the number one, and I think they want to do that to buy them a little bit more time to see if they can understand a scheme or system for Bargnani, because Bargnani, I think at this point is a big system guy. So if they can bring in a coach who can utilize a guy like that, like a guy like Bargnani in a D'Antoni system as a center, I think would do really well, you know. But depending what they can. What they can switch. Hey, if they want to go to the Lakers and if you want to give us wait for Bargnani to play D'Antoni style, go nuts, right? But I think
I think Barnes his ship is sailing soon, so we'll see.
Exactly. And speaking of man, you're segueing these things perfectly. Speaking of ship sailing, we have the end of another career of an NBA great. NBA great Grant Hill. Grant Hill drinks Sprite. Remember from all those years ago. Most people, if you want to look kindly towards his career, there's kind of two big segments. There's his Detroit years, which kind of set him up for that Orlando contract, which Orlando was just the worst for him, dealing with all his injuries. And then there was this this amazing moment where he landed in Phoenix, and that training staff just did wonders. You want to give your two thoughts on Grant Hill and the career that was?
Yeah, well, you got to start with Duke. He went into Duke as a freshman, and I still remember. We'll put it on our Facebook page, Hoops Lounge Facebook.com/Hoops Lounge, where the dunk he had in the Final Four game freshman year. His freshman year, I believe he was 18 years old. He's got a horrible haircut. He said after the game he hated the haircut, but he caught a ball and a really bad alley-oop from Bobby Hurley. He was, his head was at foot level, at rim level, and that set the tone for his career. He was just athletically supremely gifted, but could do it all on the court. His senior year at Duke, he was, he's 6'8". He played point guard. They did not have a point guard, and he just said, Coach K, I'll do it. I played a bit in high school. I can do it. And it was amazing. I thought that was one of the best career stages of his career. I mean, obviously, when he got to the NBA, he was, blossoming into this like just kind of Magic Johnson-esque type of player, could do it all, and immediately within honestly the players were saying his first week in the NBA, he was just like he just felt like he belonged like that. So. Early on he started having these, as you said, these horrific injuries, and he missed very much most of his prime there in Orlando. So he's going to go down in NBA history as one of those guys who's just a what if. What if he had been healthy his whole career? The person I want to compare him to is Sandy Koufax, who was a heck of a baseball pitcher but didn't get to play. And he ended up in the Hall of Fame. I believe Grant Hill went up in the Hall of Fame. And as you mentioned about Phoenix, it was amazing to see him at the very later stages of his career, 38, 37 years old. He should have been, when he was 38, he should have been second team all defense. I watched that Phoenix team all year long. He was amazing. He was guarding the best player on the opposing team as a 38-year-old. And he had this peace of mind those last few seasons. He's, you know what? I'm at peace. My career did not go as I wanted to go, but I kept my passion for my game. I kept my integrity, and I endured. And that says a lot about who he is. And he was a great person on the court and off the court, always will be. And I see him doing great things, whatever he wants to do at this stage of his career. My hat's off to him because he spent two decades of excellence in basketball.
Yeah, no, he definitely did some good things. I mean, obviously he was part of that dream team there, getting on the Olympics. I mean, it'll be an interesting call. I think the Hall of Fame is an interesting subject here because it's one of those arguments like, does your first couple of years and what you did off the court and all this add up? Because it's interesting. But he was one of the people who I think ushered in one of the point forward kind of positions in my mind. I mean, you alluded to Magic Johnson. But Johnson was a full-time point guard, but Grant Hill routinely in Phoenix did a lot with the Clippers, did a lot just ball handle, and he brought that ability. And he's one of those guys that, like I say, to be a star. I mean, it's unfortunate with injuries, but he played terrific. He underrated three-point shooter, amazing passer and ball handler, amazing finisher. He just had that ability to play mistake-free basketball, played under control, and he was under that great draft class with a number one that was actually Glenn Big Dog Robinson. He was actually drafted with Jason Kidd, so he was co-rookie of the year with Jason Kidd. So that puts you in some pretty good company, right? Because let's not pretend that Jason Kidd's not a first ballot Hall of Fame guy.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mean, that's we're looking at. I think he goes in the Hall of Fame. I don't think he really gets rejected from this one, but I think it's going to be an interesting part.
And you have to keep in mind, it's not the NBA Hall of Fame, it's the Basketball Hall of Fame. And, he had such a stellar college career, and like you said, everything he's done off the court, and I think he's going to continue to be an ambassador for the game. I think it's well-deserved. He's such a high, just classy guy, and he's given so much to basketball. I think he may not be a first ballot, but he'll get in there.
Exactly. All right, guys. Well, listen, we've run out of our half hour, so thank you so much for joining us. Myself, Sporting Phil, you can catch me on Twitter, and my co-host, Montreal Marc, catch him on Twitter too. That's Marc Griffin, Phil Boileau, and as always, check out all of our great stuff on hoopslounge.com. Keep it all in one hub for you, and as always, if there's anything you want to see, hear, talk about, or anything, we have plenty of places on there for you to write in. So, Marc, thank you again.
You're welcome. I just want to say we're great on technology. These are my notes from today. We're all about old school and new school.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining.